Hi, welcome to the Careers channel. My name is Tuba, and I'm the Communications Manager for East and Southern Africa at WWF. Today, I'll be talking to you about finding your feet in your career. I'm excited, and I hope you can find some gems in my story. So how did I find myself working in communications? That was not my dream, actually. I always wanted to be a teacher because my mom also wanted to be a teacher, but she was a nurse. And I actually applied to study education. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to travel to Canada, where I wanted to study from, so I had to settle for South Africa, where I went and studied public relations. So I have a diploma in public relations and a BTech degree in business admin. I didn't know what PR was about at that time, so I just wanted to go to university. I wanted to study whatever. If I'm not going to be a teacher, I might as well study something. But I think the subjects that I took in high school, they actually helped me. So I might look young, but I'm actually not. I finished high school 18 years ago, and I went to school in Zambia, where I'm from. We didn't get to choose subjects. We maybe had to choose between history and geography or French and accounting, but we didn't have to choose the major subjects. So I took sciences, I took English, and I took other like geography as well. So I think it gave me an edge. I think it did help me in that I knew a little bit about everything. How does this apply to you? If you're in a position where you can choose your subjects, choose whatever makes you happy. Choose whatever you find easy, whatever comes naturally to you. But I think what could help is to read a lot, be curious, have a natural curiosity from reading, whether it's magazines, books, and also this might be controversial, but TV as well. Those comedy shows, they're packed with so many gems, and it just helps you learn how to carry yourself in different settings. So I've shared with you how I came to study communications, but I now want to share how you also can position yourself for the job of your dreams. I am currently in my dream job and I absolutely love it, but it took about 10 to 12 years to get here. And it all began in my final year in 2014 when I accidentally stumbled upon this piece of advice, which was to make myself visible. How did that work for me? I started sending out cold applications. I was applying for jobs that didn't exist. I wrote to companies, I wrote to CEOs, I wrote to managers. Mind you, at this point, I had 0 minutes of experience. I was an international student, which in South Africa or any country really makes you at the bottom of the pile because it's national students and then people with experience. And then if there's space, it's people that are not from that country. So I just started sending out cold applications. I wrote to multiple organizations, including the White House, because what's the worst they can say? It's no. So I've applied for a job at NASA even. The world is your oyster. But I started small. So my first job was in a market research organization. We were about 10, maybe 15 employees. I was severely underpaid, but I didn't mind. I was just so happy to be in the workforce. And it gave me the confidence because I wrote this email. The CEO replied and said, well, we don't really have a job for you, but come for an interview. I went to that interview and I just said, I just want to work. And we had been learning about market research that week. And I said, I think this is interesting. It's still very much aligned to PR and communications. And so I was employed as a sales assistant. I am not happy to report that I completely failed at that job. I'm horrible at sales. I cannot sell anything to save my life. But somehow they could see my passion and my willingness to work. And so they gave me a different job. It wasn't a promotion. It was exactly a very lateral move, but they put me in something that I was able to thrive in a little bit more. Unfortunately, that company had to shut down, but I now had a formula that worked. So I knew, okay, you just need to put yourself out there. So that's what I did. I continued cold applying to many organizations. And then I worked in a nonprofit. I worked in lifestyle and celebrity PR. Where else did I work? I worked in a restaurant even. I was managing social media for a restaurant. All of these jobs were never advertised. Now, is there value in looking through job boards? Absolutely. I think you should spread, your seed as far as possible. But understand that there are so many graduates out there, and you need to find something that gives you an edge. So now fast forward to 2018, I've now got, a couple of years under my belt. I did the thing again, but this time I actually called. I made a phone call to this PR agency still in Johannesburg that I really admired. And I said, "Hi, my name is Tuba. This is my CV and I'm looking for a job." And then they called me for an interview. I took that interview, and I think that job, I can credit that job as being one of them that set me on this trajectory. I had to move back to Zambia during COVID. And when I got back home, I realized, hey, there's many things happening here. And this is also another point. This might be speaking to international students. You don't have to stay in the country that you studied. You can go home, or you can explore other places as well. It's okay. The world is our oyster. So when I got back to Zambia, I was watching the news actually, and this organization, WWF, came on. I was like, hey, I know those guys. And I did what I know best. I wrote another cold email. So I have strategies on how I find these emails, and I'll share them with you shortly. So I wrote another cold email, this time directly to the country director. And I said, "Hi, my name is Tuba. This is my CV. I'm looking for a consultancy," because I know that's a big organization. Asking for a job is too much. I said, "I'm looking for a consultancy." And they gave me a 6-month consultancy. And I know it sounds so easy right now, like, oh, you ask and they give you. In my lifetime, I think I've sent out about 10,000 job applications. I've been rejected so many times, and I've gotten so many no's. I've gotten so many ghostings, like where nobody just responds. It's okay. Applying for a job is a numbers game. So if you're going to take anything from this, make sure you know that you can put yourself out there. You don't have to wait for that job ad or job board. And make sure you also understand that applying for a job is a full-time job. You need to have a list of organizations that you work for. How can you come up with this list? In your day-to-day, when you wake up and you're having cornflakes for breakfast, you can apply to Kellogg's. You can apply to Nivea. I have a wish list of companies that I applied to. That's why I told you I applied to the White House. I applied everywhere. And that was my full-time job. I would wake up at 7 a.m., take a shower, sit at my desk from 8 until 1 p.m., just applying. Dear sir, dear madam, this is my CV. This is what I've done. This is what I've done. And then I would take lunch, because you have to make sure you're resting. And then I continue the rest of the day until 5 p.m. applying for jobs. Nobody sees those tears. Nobody sees those rejections. It's now I'm here and I can tell my story. I asked for a job and I got it. And that can be your story too, but you have to put in the work. So you might be wondering, how long does this process actually take? I wish I could say it only took a week of, using job hunting as a full-time job. No, it took quite some time actually. If I'm to piece together how long I've been unemployed, I think the longest time was 3 months. And in that 3 months, my full-time job was looking for a job. That 3-month period was in about 2020, and that's when I landed WWF, with whom I've been since then. It's now going on 6 years in this November. So it takes some time. And like I keep saying, there will be rejections. There will be no's. There will be no, we don't have a job for you. But there also will be people that can take a chance on you because you've put yourself out there. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. So it might take some time. Mine, I guess if we put the years together, it took 6 years from 2014, my very first job, and all these little jobs. I'm a typical millennial. I job hunt a lot. I didn't stay in a job more than 18 months, but I'm settled now. So it took some time, and you should be prepared for that too in your journey. So now I want to share with you how you can actually apply for these jobs, how to find them, and how to find email addresses especially. Right. So what I do is, the first thing is I had a list. You need to find companies that bring you joy, that you think it would be prestigious to work for. I keep going back to my example of the White House, because honestly, I think that's the most ambitious one I ever applied to. But what if it had worked out? Who knows? So anyway, you need to have a list of organizations that you would want to work for. That's your dream, your dream list, you can call it. And then what you need to do is Google them. I think everybody that I'm speaking to is very familiar with how to Google. So Google that organization, and most of them should have a website. If they don't, there's your in. You can say, hello, I would like to create a website for you. But they usually should have a website. And on that website, they usually have teams. So you go into the team and you see who's who here, who's the CEO, who would be the person that I'd be reporting to. So I'm in communications. So I would, at that point, be reporting to a communications manager. Now that I'm a manager myself, I would be reporting to a director or a head of. So you can write either to the person you'd be reporting to, or to the director or the CEO themselves. Be bold, be brave. I will tell you not to write to HR, because HR's job is to come in after you've been offered the job. So don't bother with HR yet. Write to the person. So note down the name of the person that you want to send your application to. It could be the director or the person you'll be reporting to. Once you've got down their name, you should always have a notebook and a pen. Write that down. Go back into Google, and then now Google at companyname.com or .org email address. There's at one point, there's somebody in that organization who's written a press release, who's been in the news, and you will find in an email address, the email format. Once you have the email format, you go back to the name that you noted and you piece them together. So now you have Tuba Mutwale at wwf.org, because you did some stalking. You need to put those stalking capabilities to work. It's not just for Facebook. You can use your stalking capabilities to find a job. And that is the simplified version of how you can find the email address. Now, what do you say in the actual email? The subject could be anything, looking for a job, or introduction, or, do you have time to chat? Anything. Be creative and be you. Make sure you stick to your personality, what is comfortable for you, and how you think you can do things in an easy way. And the cover letter, very standard cover letter, something that we probably all learned in secondary school or in comm skills in university. But you should start with, I understand, there might not be any jobs available, or I understand you're not currently hiring, but I thought this organization was interesting because blah, blah, blah. You should do some of your research as well. So you should stalk the company a bit more. There's always something interesting about these organizations. Maybe you like how they went to one of their retreats, or you like an article on their blog section. Reference that. Oh, I found it interesting when you did ABCD, and it would be honored, or I would be glad to join the company. You are asking for a job, so you do have to have a call to action. Here's my CV. Please let me know if you have time for a chat in the next few weeks. Bonus point, if they say yes, come in for a chat, it's not a chat, it's an interview. So be prepared. Dress smartly. Don't dress casual like me. It's a Friday, but dress smartly. Be on your put your best foot forward so that you can increase the odds in your favor. So as I mentioned, these things can and do work. So, best case scenario, you get called for a chat, which, remember, is an interview. So now you go into this interview, you're sharply dressed, you've put your best foot forward. How does it go? Honestly, it really depends on the interviewer. But you should remember, you too are interviewing them. When you don't have a job, it feels like any job will do. But you also have to go in there thinking, am I a good fit for you? Is this company a good fit for me? So you should also be interviewing them back and take it as a conversation. You greet them, you say hello, you make some small talk. Remember when I said you should watch TV? TV helps you with small talk. You can reference a nice show that you watched or something. You could take a pickup line from a show that you had watched or a book you had read. So in that interview is a conversation happening between two people that are sussing themselves out. Also, remember, this job was not advertised. We're assuming that you went the cold calling route, and you've gotten a job interview that was not advertised. Now you need to be extremely confident and also knowledgeable. The thing that you referenced in your cover letter saying you enjoyed or you liked on the website, you need to build up on that. Why do you think that is? And then you should also always come with questions. If they ask you at the end of the chat, which is an interview, do you have any questions? Always say yes. Always say yes. And you should have prepared some questions for them. Those are easily Googleable. They're everywhere with these LLMs that we have now. I'm sure they can help you create some questions, but make sure you have a notebook of about 3 to 4 questions maybe, I would refrain from asking about the salary or leave days or what. You have to pretend it's not about money, even though we know it's all about money. But you have to ask things like, oh, what do you think success would look like? Or, how come you had never thought of opening up this role? Or like, how come this was not identified as a need? You need to come in and show them that you are smart and an intellectual, because you are. If you've managed to finish your diploma, your degree, or even your high school, that means you are very well able to do the job. So another best case scenario, if this chat, which is an interview, goes really well, what happens next? You rarely, if ever, offered a job on the spot. And honestly, I would be a bit wary if somebody hired me on the spot. That might be a red flag or a pink flag to look out for. But what normally would happen is the organization, now remember, this was likely a job that, they hadn't really prepped for, but you've sold yourself so well that they're now thinking of taking you on. They would probably have to go now, talk amongst themselves, do their due diligence, see if there's actually budget and all of those things. And then they might ask you to then still send in an application so that it can follow their internal rules of applying. Remember, you disrupted things. They were not expecting a cold email. So in that time, it might take time. It might be anything from a month. For example, at one of the jobs that I applied for back in the day, it took about 3 months. So I think I remember applying in around August and only receiving the offer letter in November. What did I do during that time? I stayed lightly in touch. I sent an email, I think once a month, so maybe I sent 3 emails in total. But I also didn't put all my eggs in one basket. Just because I've landed one interview does not mean I've got a job offer. So immediately after that interview, you should celebrate. You should be happy. You should maybe take a day off or an afternoon off from looking for a job. So what I would do I would celebrate, I would say, I'm going to sleep in tomorrow. I'm just going to go have some nice lunch. And the next day, I'm back to the full-time job of looking for a job. You only stop applying for jobs when you have signed that contract and you've been given the date to start. So that's what you do when you're interviewing actively and looking for a job, is you keep looking for a job. And now let's talk negotiations and the main reason we get jobs: for the money. So another slightly controversial tip is never work for free. Don't do it. It's not worth it. You're going to be tired. You're going to be worked as a normal employee, but without that compensation, it can get hard. I personally, that is my personal ethos. I do not give my labor for free because I know that what I bring to the table is valuable. So I would advise that you also try and get compensated for your work. Even if you have 0 minutes of experience. I told you in my first job, I was severely underpaid, but I was paid. So I think you should absolutely put value in your work so that others can also see that value. And if you've gained some experience, then you know what the market rate is. Make sure you're always reading, you're always staying curious, you're always doing research on what the going rate is. You might not be able to demand a car and housing, straight out of university. If you do, very lucky, but that's usually not how it works. But you should know the going rate, the market rates of the job that you're applying for. And it also applies once you're 10 years in. You've got that experience. You know what peers in other organizations are getting paid, peers in your same organization perhaps. So you just need to make sure that you're always staying abreast with market trends, you're doing research, and you're staying curious. Friends, I hope that you've learned something, enjoyed my story, and picked 1 or 2 gems. And now that you hypothetically have this job, or you have the tools to get this job, join me in part 2 on how to succeed in your new job.